We only want successful people here. My sister sneered, blocking the door. This restaurant is too expensive for you. Then the security guard saw me. Madam CEO, your usual table. My family went pale. I owned the entire hotel chain. Hey Reddit. I never cared much for status symbols. Suits, designer handbags, cars with names I couldn't pronounce. None of that mattered to me. What did matter was building something that was mine. Something that couldn't be taken away, mocked, or dismissed. I never said it aloud, but every decision I made since I was 17 was fueled by the way my family treated me. Like a failure before I even had a chance. It all started at a family dinner when I was just out of college. I had gone against the grain, majoring in hospitality management when my family believed anything less than law or medicine was a waste of tuition. I told them I wanted to work my way up, maybe even manage my own hotel one day. My sister Allison had laughed so hard she choked on her wine. Mom just shook her head and muttered that I was wasting my potential. Dad avoided eye contact and changed the subject. That dinner stuck with me for years. I worked hard. Started as a front desk clerk at a budget hotel. I scrubbed bathrooms when housekeeping was short-staffed, folded towels during night shifts, and learned every inch of how a hotel operated. 10 years later, I owned my first boutique hotel that one turned into 3, then 10. Eventually, I acquired a struggling national chain and rebranded it from the ground up. Now I sit at the helm of a privately owned hotel empire spanning over 30 properties nationwide. Quietly, deliberately, and without ever telling a soul in my family, I kept a low profile. No social media, no flashy magazine interviews, nothing that would put me on their radar. It wasn't about hiding. It was about peace. I didn't want their opinions poisoning what I'd built. If they thought I was still average, so be it. But then came my niece's birthday, a high-end restaurant in a hotel I owned. Though my family didn't know that it had just undergone a luxury renovation and I had personally approved every detail from the wine list to the art on the walls. My niece Allison's daughter had invited me, likely out of obligation. I debated not going but decided to show up quietly. After all, it was family and I missed my niece. I wore a simple navy dress and a coat that had no designer label but was tailored to perfection. My hair was back in a low bun. Nothing flashy. I arrived on foot. My driver parked the car discreetly elsewhere. As I approached the front entrance, I saw Allison and my parents already inside, standing near the reception area. When I entered, Allison turned and immediately narrowed her eyes. She took a step toward me, placing herself between me and the dining room. We only want successful people here. She sneered, arms folded across her chest like a gatekeeper. I froze. Excuse me. This restaurant is too expensive for you, she said, gesturing around like she owned the place. We're trying to keep this event tasteful. Maybe there's a diner nearby more in your range. For a second I forgot how to breathe. I looked past her and saw my mother whisper something to my father. He just looked away. My niece wasn't even in the room yet. Allison was still standing in my path when the head of security, Raymond, walked over, his face breaking into a warm smile. Madam CEO, your usual table. He said it loud enough for the room to pause. And suddenly everything froze. Allison's mouth dropped open. My mother turned white. My father's face was blank, like he'd rebooted mid-thought. I didn't look at them. I smiled at Raymond. Thank you. I'll be joining a private party in the main room. Could you let the chef know I'll take the Riesling from last week? Of course, madam. I walked past Allison, who was still frozen, and entered the dining area like I own the place, because I did. Every chandelier, every hand-woven rug, every menu item was chosen under my leadership. I didn't need their validation anymore, but watching them squirm, that felt better than I'd expected. The meal was awkward. My niece ran up and hugged me, delighted I came. She was the only one who didn't seem to notice the tension. My mother kept quiet for most of it, barely touching her food. My father tried asking small talk questions, but there was a discomfort he couldn't mask. Allison, she sat stiffly, eyes darting from me to the staff, clearly trying to process the fact that the woman she'd dismissed was apparently the top dog of the very place she'd flaunted. At one point she asked if I'd made a reservation or if they just let walk-in sit at CEO tables now. I smiled. I've always had a table here and everywhere else. That was when my mother finally broke her silence. How long have you been doing this? Doing what, Mom? Owning hotels. Running places like this. I dabbed my lips with a napkin. About 7 years now, give or take. Why didn't you ever say anything? She asked, genuinely puzzled. You just disappeared because every time I tried to talk about my dreams you laughed or told me to be more realistic. So I stopped talking. I built them instead. That shut the table up again. My niece looked confused but smiled at me anyway. The rest of the meal was fine. I stayed long enough for cake and photos, hugged my niece goodbye and nodded politely to the rest. Allison didn't say a word. My mother looked like she'd aged 5 years in a night. I walked out with my head high. Raymond opened the door and wished me a good night. The valet brought my car around and I stepped into it feeling more powerful than I ever had. But I knew that wouldn't be the end of it. The very next morning I got a text from my sister. We need to talk. Family doesn't keep secrets like this. I didn't reply. A few hours later my father called. When I didn't answer he left a voicemail saying they were shocked but proud and maybe we could all talk over dinner. Again I didn't respond. Then came the kicker, an email from Allison. A long winding message asking if I might consider investing in her new spa concept. She pitched it like we were partners, like we'd always believed in each other. That's when I realized they weren't just embarrassed. They were scrambling. They wanted in. And I wasn't sure if I was ready to forgive the years of dismissal just because the balance of power had shifted. But before I could decide what to do, the media got wind of something I didn't see coming. My identity as the owner of the hotel chain was leaked, and that's when everything exploded. I didn't plan for the article to drop. I didn't ask for the spotlight, but someone, maybe a vendor, maybe a board member looking to curry favor, leaked my name to a popular business blog. The headline read, "The Silent Queen of Hospitality. Meet the woman behind the most exclusive hotel chain you've never heard of." The article was flattering, too flattering for my comfort. It detailed my rise from hotel clerk to CEO, the renovations I spearheaded, the celebrity endorsements I quietly brokered. It even had an old photo of me during my early days in a blazer 2 sizes too big, smiling nervously at a ribbon-cutting ceremony. I hadn't seen that photo in years. The story blew up. Within 24 hours, every relative I hadn't spoken to in a decade was suddenly messaging me. Second cousins, distant aunts, people who used to call me a burden or whisper about my failures when I was waitressing during college now wanted to reconnect. My phone became a graveyard of shallow apologies and fake excitement, but the worst came from my immediate family. My mother called 3 times that morning. Each voicemail more emotionally manipulative than the last. She wanted to know why I had excluded them from my life. How I could embarrass them by letting the world know I was successful without acknowledging the family that raised me. As if they'd raised me with encouragement instead of condescension. My father sent a text that simply read, "Dinner Sunday. No excuses." And then Allison, she showed up. Literally. I was in the executive lounge of one of my Los Angeles properties when my assistant buzzed my line. "There's a woman here. She says she's your sister. She's insistent." I almost told her to send security, but curiosity got the better of me. I told her to let Allison up. She entered like she owned the place. The irony didn't escape me. Hair done, designer purse slung over her shoulder, heels too high for any reasonable appointment. She sat across from me without asking. "So this is real? You really made it?" I kept my expression flat. "I didn't invite you here, Allison." She leaned in. "Look, I know we've had our differences. But this is incredible. You're incredible. And I've been thinking, what if we joined forces?" I blinked. Joined forces? I've been planning a wellness resort brand. You know, something high-end. Yoga, cleanses, digital detox. You've got the infrastructure. I've got the vision. We could dominate. I stared at her like she was a stranger. "Allison, do you remember when I told you I wanted to manage a hotel? Do you remember laughing so hard you nearly cried? You said I'd end up handing out towels at a gym. That was years ago. People grow. I was immature. Sure. But come on. You can't seriously hold a grudge forever." I tilted my head. "This isn't about a grudge. It's about patterns. You dismissed me when I was building. Now that I've built something, you want to benefit from it. That's not growth. That's opportunism." She scoffed. "So what? You're better than us now." "No. I've always been me. You just never bothered to see it." She looked around the room clearly flustered. You don't understand what it's like for the rest of us. Mom and Dad are humiliated. You embarrassed them in front of everyone. I laughed not kindly. They embarrassed themselves. I offered them a chance to know me years ago. They weren't interested. I don't owe them a performance just because the cameras are finally rolling. Allison stood up abruptly. Fine. Enjoy your little empire. Just don't come crying when you realize family is all you've got left. She stormed out without another word. I sat there staring out the window, and for the first time in a long time I felt something strange. Not sadness, not regret, relief. They had finally said it aloud. The transaction they had always expected. That love, respect, and support from them would only come once I became useful to them. Now that I had, they wanted to pretend nothing had happened, but it had. I skipped the Sunday dinner. My father sent a long-winded email afterward scolding me like I was still 16. I archived it. My mother left a voicemail crying. I didn't respond. A week later I hosted a press event at one of my newly acquired international properties. The media dubbed me the reclusive heiress of hotels. I gave exactly one interview. And when asked about my family, I said simply, they taught me that rejection can be fuel. It went viral. Suddenly I was more than a business story. I was an icon for people who'd outgrown toxic families. People wrote to me thanking me for showing that success could be quiet, self-made, and unapologetic. And as for my niece, she was the only one who genuinely reached out. She sent me a DM that said I had no idea. You're amazing. Teach me everything. So I did. I took her under my wing, gave her an internship at one of the properties, and watched her bloom without her mother's shadow looming over her. Years passed. My parents never apologized. Allison eventually opened her spa with a loan she pulled from Dad's retirement. Failed within 8 months. She blamed me. I didn't care. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't vindictive. I just finally understood the piece of choosing who belongs in your life. Success didn't change me. It just revealed who never really knew me at all. And now I don't walk into my own hotels unnoticed anymore. I walk in with quiet pride, not because they finally saw me, but because I never needed them to. I saw myself all along.